and I called the Domestic Violence Hotline because I really didn't feel like I could talk to anybody in my life about it. Because once you tell somebody that your husband is abusive, you can't take it back.
Mhm.
Once the knowing is out there, it felt like it was something that I was just scared to tell my family. And I called the domestic violence hotline, and they were so wonderful. They took me through a list of, I think, maybe around 15 questions. And I ended up saying yes to about 13 of them. Like, has he ever done this? Has he ever done that?
Welcome to the That's Where I'm At podcast. I'm Laura, happily divorced after spending years with a narcissist. I believe keeping secrets will make you sick and that they always come to light in the end. As women, we're often told to be quiet, don't share your story, don't talk about the things we go through. It's making women sick, sad, and suicidal. We don't have to be on the other side to share our story. This show is for the women still in the middle of the mess, but showing up bravely as they heal. It's time to share these stories with each other so we can learn, grow, and heal together. I'm Laura, and that's where I'm at. Please take note that this episode may contain subjects that may be triggering to certain listeners. Please take care when listening today. Hi, guys, and welcome back to the That's Where I'm At podcast. If you're only listening today, I hope you'll go check out and subscribe to the YouTube channel where you can see our beautiful faces and leave some love for our guests. Today on the show, I have Jubilee. Jubilee is a content creator and the host of two podcasts, Healedish and the Overshare Hour. She shares her story of joining a cult, getting married to an abusive man because of a prophecy, and getting divorced over a Disney burger. She now speaks about all things religious trauma, purity culture, and deconstruction. So, Jubilee, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. You just speak on just like light things, just very light and airy.
All happy things, no serious topics over here. So,
I can so resonate, watching you on social media, listening to you with the purity culture and all that. So I didn't grow up that way, but I tortured my children into that. So I was the mom who dragged them to all the things you're talking about. I'm like, I was that mom, but that's okay.
we live, learn.
That's exactly it. I've learned along the way. We're all, deconstructing and all that. So it's been interesting. I love to see other people doing the work too, because how you start to feel kind of alone, right? Especially when you've been in a community. And I don't know if you felt that way, like as you start to be like, wait, what's going on? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? As you're unraveling everything, you're going to lose your entire community. How was that for you?
Oh, it's isolating. It's really hard because I think, especially when you're in high control religious systems, they teach you to not walk in life with people who might lead you
Yeah.
astray. So it's hard because as you're talking to your friends about, like, I have these questions, they're automatically going to put up boundaries with you because they don't want it to affect their faith. So it just naturally, even if the other people have good intentions, it just naturally, the relationships kind of fizzle from there. And I would say that's probably the hardest part of
Yeah.
deconstruction is the lack
Mhm.
of community.
Yeah. And for me, everything fell apart. The church was the first thing I started unraveling. And then my marriage, friendships, my family, everything kind of unraveled. But because I changed, right? And so I never put a demand on anybody else, but everything around you becomes different, right? It just becomes a different thing. And I had the hardest time with that. I just thought like people are just going to rally around me. And oh, you were married to an abuser. We're going to rally around you. And then people going like, are you sure? And you should really stay and pray. And I'm like, I did that for 25 years. I'm not going to do that anymore. And so that to me was the most surprising thing, calling my coach sobbing, saying, so I have no friends. This is it. I'm not going to have friends. Just me.
Especially, when you divorce an abuser in these sorts of circles, it's hard because you're taught that we should always forgive. We need to
Yeah.
forgive or we won't be forgiven. So I know with my ex, we'll get into it, but with my ex, he offered to go to an abuser program, do all of the therapy,
Wow.
And I had some Christians telling me, what else do you want him to do? He's doing all of the stuff, he's doing all of the things to make it right. And I was like, I don't want to die though, you
Yes,
know?
exactly. Yeah, we'll get into that. But it's like, I just don't want him to try and kill me. Like, those are things I don't want.
So it's almost like you end up being the bad person in the scenario,
For
despite the
sure.
fact of having endured so many years of abuse.
Yeah, for sure. And I have some, for anyone who wants a Christian perspective, I have those resources on my website because the God hates divorce scripture is thrown around and used as a sword. And I'm like, there are people who will tell you that you do not have to stay in abuse. So I want to start the conversation with really like why you decided to start talking and then take us all the way back to like how you got into the cult and all that stuff.
Oh, so why I started talking about it on
Yeah.
everything? Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't even know. I think I've always been a really open person. So even when I was in my abusive marriage at the time, I was like trying to be a Disney blogger. So I was already very used to social media and trying
Okay.
to present my life and everything, despite the fact that I was definitely just showing a very flowery sense of
Of course.
going on. Yeah, but I ended up posting for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And yeah, I just had some posts that really gained traction, people seeming to care what I had to say. And I started to feel like I wanted to raise awareness about Bethel and the cult. And
Mhm.
that's really when I would say it took off because I didn't start posting thinking I'm going to be a deconstruction religious trauma page or anything. I was
Right.
just trying to share my healing process and everything that I had gone through. And I kind of just fell into all of this. And it's been amazing. It's been so healing. I think it
Yeah.
really helps replace as much as you can the community that you lose when you leave those systems.
Well, you realize that other people feel the same way you do. And so there's a new community out there. So tell me how you ended up at Bethel and joining the cult.
Oh my gosh. Well, that was like such a nightmare. It was all hype. So I feel like I had never heard of charismatic Christianity or the speaking in tongues, healing, or anything
Okay.
like that. And yeah, when I talk to other Christians, I think it's really funny. They say, oh, yeah, I had a season where I was into that. It kind of feels like everybody goes through their charismatic
Mhm.
season where they're into the signs and wonders and the hype. So I ended up going to a conference, and at the time I had PTSD. I had actually just been staying in a mental hospital. I was 17 years old,
Mm.
and I was just in a very dark place in my life. And I had been put on all this medication, and I go to this conference, and this woman up on the stage is my introduction. Her name's Heidi Baker, and she said, I hear that God is healing PTSD tonight. And if that's you, come to the front.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I mean, I wasn't even supposed to be there. It was in a different city. And I thought, oh, this is all for me. All of
Mhm.
this is for me. And I went to the front and I got prayer. And, I think it's important to point out like the things that make you think that this is right, the confirmations that you receive, because I got prayer. I thought I'm fully healed. And I
Mhm.
actually had been having nightmares almost every single night for years. And
Mhm.
I didn't have nightmares for years after I got prayer.
Wow.
And I can't really explain it. I don't know. I felt
Mhm.
fully healed and I went off all of my medication, which is horrible. You're not supposed to do that, but
Right.
and I just quit it cold turkey and I ended up looking her up online and I found out that she was in a documentary called The Finger of God.
Yeah.
And this documentary was all about, do miracles still happen today?
Mhm.
And in that documentary, Bethel, the cult, was in it, and it showed these crazy kids going and doing these things called treasure hunts, where they go and evangelize on the street, and they are saying that they're seeing these crazy healings, people's legs growing out, manna appearing in their Bible, gold dust, and God just performing these huge miracles that we thought had stopped after the Bible. And I went to Bethel. I decided, okay, I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to go do this thing and I'm going to be a missionary. I'm going to dedicate my life to this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I spent a few years there and it was a wild time for sure.
I want to ask you about when you saw the movie. I totally have seen the movie as well. So, like everything you're saying, because you and I have talked that the church I attended in Las Vegas we had all the people from Bethel there. I mean, we've had Heidi Baker there. Look, I've seen Heidi Baker and the way she is. And it's hard, right? Because I wish I had thought about this beforehand. What is it? I mean, it's almost a placebo effect, but there's something real about it, right? There's something real. Who knows if it's God or not, but it's like there's something happening. I think the problem therein lies when it's manipulated and it's used the wrong way. You know what I'm saying? Like to hurt people, that's when I think it's a problem. But when you were watching the movie and seeing all these signs and wonders and all that, what did you think? Did you think it was weird? Did you go, oh my gosh, this is what I want?
I was eating it up because I think, you've seen Heidi Baker. So,
Yeah.
she has this whimsy about her. And I
Yeah.
just thought, I trust her. I've seen
Mhm.
myself be healed in the last 5 hours. I don't literally went home and watched it immediately. But I just remembered thinking, are you telling me that the world is not boring? Like I get to live in some sort of Harry Potter type of world where miracles still happen and we can do all of these really cool things. And it just felt very real to me. And I think one of the reasons why I fell so hard into the cult
Mhm.
was my entire family was spinning and falling into the cult with me.
Oh,
So
okay.
we
Gee.
were hype, to the point where I mean, I want to be sensitive about certain terms, but I feel like
Of
I was
course.
almost manic. I was so
Yeah.
bouncing the walls, not myself. It's hard to even look back and recognize myself. It's all
Mhm.
I wanted to talk about. And my family was the exact same way. So I had some family members join the International House of Prayer while I went to Bethel, and we were all going to be missionaries at the same time. So when you're surrounded by people like that, and I
Mhm.
assume like even with your church, you're surrounded
Yeah.
by that,
Oh,
you
yeah,
don't
for sure.
see. You
Yeah,
feel like it would be crazy to not believe
for
all of these
sure.
happening.
Yeah, for sure. And then, what's so interesting? I was listening to one of your episodes the other day, and I don't remember her name, but she was talking about how everybody was having the same exact experiences, what she was in, because she was in at the same time you were in. I don't remember her name, but anyway,
Mm-hmm.
what was it?
Chris, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. And it was such a good the two episodes, it was so good. And she was saying how everybody was like, quote unquote, performing the same way. Every prayer, everything was exactly the same way. And I'm like, oh, I saw that so much. And you felt weird if you weren't doing it. And you thought something was wrong with you if you weren't doing it. And you didn't have enough faith or whatever the issue was. You have to pray harder, all those things.
Yeah, one thing she said, which I really resonated with, was it almost felt like everybody was trying to be in the Bethel mold. What is the
Yeah.
ideal Bethel person? What does it mean to
Yeah.
be this? So you see these people manifesting, falling down, speaking in tongues. And, I'm sure there is a lot of psychology behind it because you really just come out a different person. You're not the same as when you first arrive at Bethel. Because I do remember my first year, or at least the first couple weeks, I did start to get that thing in my gut where I thought, okay, this is weird. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
Because that was the first time I had seen people manifest in the spirit, which just basically means they're shaking and twitching and they're falling to the
Yeah.
floor. And it felt very odd. And it's not what I was raised in. And I think
Mm.
that there was something in my gut that thought, okay, this place is strange. But after 2 to 3 months there, then you're praying that it's going to happen to you because you think, well, if God is touching them, I want God to touch me.
Right.
So yeah, you just end up changing in those environments very quickly.
Well, and then that's a cult too, right? That's the cult because the why you wanted to look a certain way or why you do look a certain way when you leave, it's not just quote unquote God changing you. You are succumbing to exactly what the cult wants you to do, right? And so if there was listen, I totally get all of this, like I totally resonate with all of this. Like there's just a certain way, there's certain words you want to say, so this is part of the thing. And tell me if you resonate with this. It's like we were just saying, losing your community. You will lose your community or be looked at as a little different, and I was like so amazed by your guest who was like, she was like, I'm not gonna do that. I was just like, this is amazing. I never would have had the bravery to do that at all.
I know it is a lot of pressure because they would even have us line up and say they're going to come and touch you and you might fall, but okay. Everybody knew that if you don't fall, maybe you're not open enough to the Holy Spirit. So
Yeah.
it is the shame culture of you need to
Yes.
conform to what the group and what the cult is doing, or else maybe you have some sin in your life. Like, what do you have some sin in your life or
Right.
have unbelief? So it's very hard to maintain yourself a sense of self in those
Yeah.
environments.
And so you went, what did you go there for? Some sort of ministry school?
Yes. So it was called Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry. So we used to joke that we were the Christian Hogwarts. And looking back on it now, we thought we were in on the joke. And I'm like, we were not in on the
Oh,
joke. like ridiculous. Yeah. So my goal was just to be a missionary. So I did 2 years there. I did a couple mission trips with Bethel. And then for my third year, there was the opportunity to do an internship for somebody in this sector. So you would try to find like a pastor
oh,
who,
okay.
and you could apply. They had a list of everybody who was taking interns, and I applied for Georgine and Winnie Banoff. So that was out in Pennsylvania. They had their own kind of Bethel school called Global Celebration School of Supernatural Ministry.
Wow.
And it was so much smaller. It was funny because I thought, wow, I'm so lucky to get this internship. I bet
Mhm.
people were fighting for this because I don't know if you've heard Georgian and Winnie Banoff, like they're pretty
No, I
big names.
haven't.
Yeah, well, they're like one of those traveling people like Heidi
Okay.
Baker who
Hmm.
they're constantly at conferences and stuff.
Hmm.
And I ended up being the only Bethel person there. And then turns out their school only had 60 people in all of the years of the school, whereas
Oh,
Bethel had 1,200 students just in the first year.
wow.
So
Okay. Yeah. So different. Such a culture shock.
tiny. I was like, oh, this is a tiny school, and I
Mhm.
was just the only Bethel person there. So I also found that kind of isolating. And if I'm being honest, one thing that I found kind of interesting is Bethel gets away with doing a lot of very odd things, like all of those manifestations. And, it's just odd beliefs and odd behaviors. But I feel like they get away with it because it's very hipster. Everybody who goes to Bethel is very cool and they're young, and it feels like it's the cool thing to do to be there. And then when I went to this school, it was like your weird uncle. You know what I mean? Like it was just like a bunch of like different type of people. I mean, there were some very, very nice people, but it wasn't as trendy, I would say, as Bethel. And I feel like I started to step back and think, okay, these now that it's not so shiny with the hipster kind of vibe of Bethel, this is weird. Like what we
Oh,
believe is weird. And, there were people who were really into mysticism and
uh-huh.
kind of that side of it. There were people who thought that there were, like Benny Johnson, she had said that she knew somebody who was 300 years old, supposedly.
Okay.
She said that from the stage. So I found a lot of people like that were at this other school. They were really out there. They had some really funky beliefs. And one of those people ended up being my ex-husband that I got.
Okay. I was going to ask you where and when you met him in this journey.
Yeah, so he was working at the church. So I think I met him the first week that I got there. He was a janitor at the church. He was working 15 hours a week as
Oh,
the janitor. And he was also a second year student at the school. So, yeah, he seemed very nice. Everybody had nothing but good things to say about him. I call him Ted. He
hmm.
seemed very generous. Like, I remember one time we went out to Buffalo Wild Wings after school, and he literally paid for 20 to 30 people to eat. And he paid the tab and left before anybody could say thank you. And I was like, wow, this man is just such a kind. Now I'm like, his parents for sure paid for that. Okay.
Yeah.
But like,
Well, and not only that is like people who are toxic, narcissistic, whatever you want, psychopaths, all that, they want to look like the hero. And so they're gonna throw, I have a video right now going about about this very thing. My ex would get mad at me over $20 and he'd go drop $450 at lunch. Like, no problem.
absolutely. And I think he was the epitome of that, to the point where there was kind of this popularity contest where they would say the most, I don't even know, like the best student at the school, kind of like being voted class president at the end. And he was voted the best student of the year previously. So I had only heard wonderful things about this man. And I didn't really view him in a romantic sense because he was 10 years older than me.
Oh, okay. Wow.
He was also just not my type, which is fine. But I never thought about him in that way. But I ended up, my housing fell through and I needed a place to stay. This was around January, early January 2015, I think. And he overheard my conversation to my mom where I was saying, "Oh, I have nowhere to stay. I'm probably going to have to quit my internship. What am I going to do?" And he ended up coming up to me afterward and said, "Hey, I heard your conversation with your mom. I hope you're not mad. I called my friends and they said that you can live with them for the rest of the year for free." And I I was just so taken aback. I was like, "This man is my
Yeah.
savior. He saved the day, knight in shining armor." I got in his car, he drove me there, and we started dating very quickly. He was very love bomby, very romantic. I remember there was a snowstorm and I had texted him and said I was hungry. This is before we were even dating. And he showed up in the middle of a snowstorm with fries and had brought me food. He was just the epitome of romance.
Right.
So
And the love bombing and really grooming you before because to make you seem like, oh yeah, he might be interesting. He might be dateable, right?
I was like, okay, 10 years older, that's quite older, but I think I could handle that. And I had just read this book. I feel like I had groomed myself in a way because I had read this book called The Sacred Search. Oh, it's
Oh,
so toxic. But in it, this Christian guy was saying, when you get married, you shouldn't even look at what someone looks like because you're all going to get old. So you should only think, are they going to be a good partner, husband, and father?
wow.
So I had read that the month before we started dating. So I was in this mindset of he is the most loving, most amazing, kind person, and nothing else matters. So I'm gonna be with him. So we dated a little bit, and then the prophecy happened a month into us dating.
Okay. So then you had a prophet, quote unquote prophet, come to visit the church. Look, I'm a victim of the same prophet, so I we'll talk about it.
Well, this man, he is the worst. He ended up going up and he called out my ex and in this crowd. And, it's so hype when you are at these
Yes,
conferences. You want God to see you because I think it's just human for us to want to feel seen.
of course.
My ex got called out and he said, "I saw the number 50 and I know that 50 means Jubilee. Does Jubilee mean anything to you?"
Oh my God.
And looking back, it's such baloney because that was on my Facebook. And we know now this guy has since been exposed for
Yeah.
the fact that he would get all of this stuff off of Facebook and through looking people up in advance. So, yeah, he said, "Well, God is giving you this girl." And I wasn't even in the room. I was working down the hill at the time at a little restaurant. And he also called out where I worked. He said, "Does she have anything to do with Tomato Pie Cafe?"
Oh my
And
God.
he was like, "Yes, she works there. Oh my gosh, it's God." And, the rest of the prophetic word was so generic. He always does these very words of knowledge kind of
Mhm.
properties, but
Mhm.
then the rest of it was pretty generic. So I ended up getting phone calls at the diner from women saying, "Is Jubilee there? Is Jubilee there?" And we were practically famous for the rest of the year of just people being so obsessed with our love story. The prophet guy posted it on YouTube. It was all over my Facebook. People,
Same. Yeah.
oh, it was so cringe looking back on it. But I thought, okay, well, we're supposed to get married and we're supposed to be together. So he proposed after literally 2 months of being together. He
Wow.
proposed.
And really, let's talk about it, because of all the grooming, right? The prophecy too. I mean, throw that in there. My gosh, you can't even you can't even plan for that at all. But the love bombing, there's like all of these things sound great, nice, whatever, right? But it's like it's that rushing. It's like you don't need to be getting engaged so fast. You don't need to be moving the relationship along so fast. You cannot know someone this quickly. You really can't.
Oh, absolutely. And on our first date, so this is maybe 2 weeks after he found me a place to stay. So it's not like we had been hanging out for months or anything. On our first date, he told me he was in love with me.
Yeah.
And, I was like, "Oh, this is so sweet." And it's funny. I think I was raised to think that those sorts of things really do happen
Yeah.
because my grandparents met in a way like that and they got engaged, married, and pregnant with my uncle within 6 months. And they were together for 50 years. And my
Mhm.
parents said that they had seen each other across the sanctuary at their Bible college. And when they met eyes, they knew that they were going to get married. And I was so primed to believe that that is how love works. And also, it's what I wanted for myself. I wanted to feel chosen and feel seen. And he very much chose me, and was willing to
Course.
do and say whatever he could to get me to settle down with him.
Mhm.
And I did. So, yeah, we got
Well,
married
and
very quickly.
I mean, we're societalized that way too, and the fairy tales and Disney, which love Disney and will, but I mean, it's like all these poor princesses are all gaslit. Like, come on, get it together. But we are societalized that way. And for me, that's what I wanted. And it's like looking at my parents who were together till the end. I'm like, my mom didn't have choices. She couldn't have left anyway, even if she wanted to leave. Like, there was no, you know, it's like, it's not like women had a lot of choices. You couldn't even get a credit card or a loan or anything without a man. So when people are like, "Oh, grandma stayed." No, grandma didn't have a choice. She didn't have a choice but to stay. So I don't know. I mean, that's just I know that we talk about that there was a commitment thing and it's like, yeah, but we don't know because they didn't have as many choices and now we have so many more choices and that's why I like to talk about it because we don't realize and for me, my gosh, being chosen and loved, yeah, that was the goal for me too. That's why my relationship was so fast too. And I was like, oh, he loves somebody loves me. Let's do it.
I know. And it just felt like such an answer to prayer. And especially like in these atmospheres, it's so easy to think that everything is a confirmation of what you
Hmm.
already believe.
Yeah.
So had so many people, they drive me nuts. Some Bethel people, they see my videos
Yes.
after all this stuff came out with the prophet and they say, well, you're supposed to test the word with your spirit and nobody made you do anything. And listen, I hear that.
Oh,
I hear that. But okay, anybody in these circles knows that this guy was known to be the most prophetic. And I also felt like I was getting confirmation. So, for example, when he proposed, fireworks went off, and I thought that he had planned it. And turns out there was like a baseball stadium nearby. And literally, the second that he proposed, we kissed, fireworks went off. And I thought that God was blessing my marriage. I was
right,
like,
of course.
the sign, God is writing my love story. And this is cringe and very weird though. I think it was 11/25/2014, I had this idea that I was going to record a prayer. It's the first time I've ever done that in my life. And I recorded this prayer on my phone of me saying, God, please send me someone. I promise, I'm such a baby. I was 20 years old. Please send me someone. And I promise I'll serve you for the rest of my life if you send me a husband. And turns out we got married on that exact date a year later. And it was not planned. I didn't notice that until like a month or two before the wedding, but it felt like confirmation of I poured my heart out to God.
Mhm.
And literally 1 year exactly later, I'm getting married. And
Right.
in my mind, I had tested the word. I thought that,
Right.
yes, this is legit. And yeah, so it definitely did make me ignore a lot of red flags. There were so many, like, I joke about it because I think it's hilarious, but he thought he was never going to die ever.
Interesting. Gosh, why did he think that?
He said that death was a curse brought by the garden, but Jesus came to break the curse. So we actually have no reason to ever die. And he told me this when we were engaged. And I said, well, no one's ever lived forever. And he said, well, no one's ever had as much faith as me. I'm going to be the first.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
And
And
so what did you think? Did it seem like a red flag or did you just think it was a little weird?
I was so uncomfortable. I don't know if I thought like red flag, like he's a bad person or anything like that, but I knew that I didn't agree with him. I
Yeah.
was like, that's what happened. And he told me that if he ever died, that he wanted me to raise him from the dead. And because Bethel did believe in raising from the dead. So
Yes.
I
Hmm.
remember I would lay awake at night and have so much stress being like, someday he's going to die. He is expecting me to raise him from the dead, and I'm not going to. Okay. And then I'm going to have to live with that for the rest of my life. He also thought that he was going to own the entire company of Disney.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
I know, which that's not a thing. You can't own Disney. There's a lot of different levels. So he was just so delusional. And I
Yeah.
think what's interesting is that during our engagement, I ended up developing fibromyalgia and I had extreme chronic pain. And to the point where on our honeymoon, I had to stop at every single bench to take a rest
Mhm.
at Disney because that's where we honeymooned. But it was my body kicking and screaming, telling me that this was not
Yeah.
right
Right.
before I mentally knew that it was not right. And
And yeah, and they do say that, that women who are in abuse, and I speak very heteronormative, but everything just like feel free to, fill in what you need. But the statistics show men are tend to be more of abusers. But so women have these autoimmune diseases and all this kind of stuff that they can't pinpoint. I had IBS, like every single thing, every time around him, I just like my stomach hurt all the time. And it was only when he was, I guess, quote unquote, stressing me out. And maybe that's when he was really like ramping up the abuse because I had a covert narcissist. And so it's hard. Were you guys married when he was saying, I'm going to own Disney and all these things? Or was this before? Or you were? Okay. And so he hadn't ever said anything like that before?
oh no, it was during the engagement.
Oh, it was. Okay. And how long had you guys been dating?
Oh my gosh. It was probably during the summer where some of those crazier beliefs came out. So
Okay.
maybe like 4 or 5 months, we were married by November. And
Yeah.
this is why, I mean, I'm very adamant and I'm not kidding, guys. I would not have married him if it was not for this prophetic word, because I remember there being so many times during the engagement where he would say things that were off, or I want to be delicate because mental health is real and it's like
Yes.
not something to be joked about. But I do remember during our engagement, I was laying in bed and he was in the shower and he was talking to himself and making like video game type noises. And I remember
Mm.
I had this like sinking feeling in my stomach. And I remembered thinking, do I even know this guy? Do I know him? And this is after the engagement. And from then on, he used to swing his arms when we would be in public, and he would get this very angry scowl on his face, and he would be talking to himself. So there was definitely something mental health going on
Hmm.
where he would tell me, "Oh, I'm just imagining myself fighting somebody like MMA." I don't know. But there was something going on for sure. And all of these things were happening in the engagement. And had I not gotten that prophetic word, I definitely wouldn't have married him because my body was already telling me, do not do this.
Yeah.
But I thought it was God's will. So,
Yeah, so I got my word in from that same prophet in 2017, and it was at a conference, and mine was the longest word. It was the biggest word. It was like a big deal. He's posted it on his YouTube, he's posted it on his Instagram, all the things. And the biggest thing in it, he called out every single thing. My ex at the time, my husband's name, phone number, our anniversary date, all things he could have gotten off of Facebook. And the thing that makes me furious is he had been to our church multiple times. So, of course, for him to call me out, I was like, it's amazing, right? It's very exciting, right? And I couldn't have hidden anyway, because the minute he started to say it was my username, the way he said it, all my friends were like, she's over there, like, so I couldn't have even like not gone up. And at the end, the generic part of it was God loves your marriage. And this was, I don't know how many years in. We got divorced, 5 years later. So we were 25 years in or something, right? And I was struggling. And to hear God loves your marriage, I was pissed after, like, when we got divorced. I was like, what does that even mean? And so I had already been deconstructing, but I was furious. And I had a friend who said, but we have free will. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to live off of that because I was furious. Like, and so the part that makes me furious is who that knew me in the church, because I have friends in the church, who that knew me and I was struggling in my marriage told him to say those things, told him to pick out my anniversary date and all those things. Whether they did or not, that's just where it still kind of makes my blood boil. And so that's the kind of thing that's where it was harmful to me. I don't get it.
no, and I think that story is so important as well, because one thing with the prophetic, they say, "Oh, well, the prophetic is supposed to be positive and whatever." So you have people try to defend this false prophet guy, con
Mhm.
artist, and say, well, is he really causing that much harm? Or like some of these prophetic
Mhm.
words are just encouraging. No, okay, because
Yeah.
you can have people who are in abusive
Hmm.
situation
Hmm.
And you're telling them God loves your marriage. So
Right.
then they feel like they can't leave. And
Hmm.
I had somebody reach out to me recently, and she had a friend out there in California, and she was married to this horribly abusive man. And then they got a prophetic word that they were supposed to start a ministry, you know, and she genuinely believed that she could not, she was thinking about leaving her husband,
Yeah.
believed she could not leave her husband because she got this word that she was supposed to start this ministry. And it's like these people just say things, okay? And I
Right.
mean, it's horrible because you're locking somebody into a life and making them think that that's what God wants for their life and to not trust their
Hmm.
own gut on what they're experiencing. And so
Yeah.
even if you give these prophetic words that you might think are innocent or, well,
Hmm.
how could that be bad to say that God loves their marriage?
Right.
No, it is. You're locking people into unsafe situations
Yeah.
when you do stuff like that.
Yeah, and what I did was my ex was not a believer in any way, and so but what I did was I went home and showed him the video because it was already up on the church website. So I showed him the video, in hopes because I spent 3 decades showing him my PowerPoint of this is how you're treating me wrong, and if you would stop, then everything would be fine, because I had a covert narcissist and everything was my fault. So I was showing him, well, God loves our marriage. And I'm sure he thought in his head, great, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, because yeah. And so to me, I did hold on. I wasn't thinking about leaving, but it made me hold on. Okay, well, God loves my marriage. Okay, things are going to get better, is what my thought process was. And then everybody can hear my story everywhere else. And then, but I want to talk about the Disney burger and how that caused your divorce, because I think it's the greatest story ever.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Well, I did want to say when you were saying
Yeah.
making a PowerPoint about telling him like here's how to treat that is really I so relate to that because I was quite frank with him. I was like, please stop being abusive. Just please. And then we can just ride off into the sunset because he had turned abusive very, very quickly into like a week before actually the wedding. And then just it spiraled from there. So it was verbal
Yeah.
abuse. Oh my gosh, he used to throw away my sleeping medication because my sleeping medication, or he would try and threaten to throw it away because he knew I needed it for my chronic pain flares to be able to get good rest. So during the middle of fights, he would do that. He would drive quickly, and then it did turn physical, and he ended up strangling me one
Mhm.
time before the Disney World Burger incident. So that's like kind of setting the scene. That is the type of
Yeah.
marriage. And I'm thinking, okay, hopefully he doesn't end up killing me. I remember reading news stories and thinking, this could be me. I could see
Right.
him doing this. So I was living in a lot of fear at the time, but I was
Yeah.
also very happy in certain ways because I had just started working for an actor who was living in Atlanta while he was shooting a film. I was a nanny for his kids
Hmm.
and they offered us a job to move to LA. So there was like so much on the line during this Disney World burger situation because we needed to make a decision in the next 2 weeks on whether or not we were going to go to LA. And I thought he was going to be so happy about that because his dream was to work in film. That's why we had moved to Atlanta in the first place.
Oh, yeah.
And the actor was saying, I will set you up and try to get your husband on sets and help him break into the industry.
Wow.
When I told him, oh my gosh, all our dreams are coming true. We can move to LA. We're going to do this. He was so mad and he didn't want to go, which was so interesting.
It
And
is. Yeah, that is interesting.
I was like, our dreams are coming true. What is going on? What is going on? Why don't you want to go? And he literally told me, I'm afraid that if we move to LA, you are going to be happy and you're going to leave me.
Oh my gosh.
Straight up.
Wow.
He was very honest that he thought that I would just find personal happiness and freedom if we moved there and that maybe I wouldn't be a Christian anymore. There was like a lot of,
Yeah.
so leading up to the Disney World Burger, we were there because I was going to be running a race with my cousin, who I'll call Alex. And I was going to run this half marathon with my ex and sorry, not with my ex, with my cousin Alex. And my cousin Alex's son was there as well. So it was the four of us. And immediately it was weird on this trip. There was some
Mhm.
weird tension going on between Ted and my cousin. And Ted was very jealous of my cousin. He used to tell me that I couldn't text my cousin past 10 p.m. at night, or I think at 9 p.m. at night, because he said it was inappropriate.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, this is my cousin. What is going
Right.
on? It was so stupid. So there was a lot of tension between them, although my cousin was so unaware of it. He thought that they were best friends. He literally called Ted his best friend and thought that they were on great terms. Meanwhile, Ted would just talk bad about him to me. And the
Gosh.
entire trip to Disney, it's like every time we wanted to do something, Ted didn't want to do it. Or, oh, let's go get this snack. No, I don't want that snack. And he was being so combative. And we had all been looking forward to this trip for like a year. And it was so uncomfortable. My cousin pulled me aside and said, what's going on with Ted? I feel like, is he mad at me? Like, did I do something? And when you have abusers in your life, you're trying to put out fires. It
Yes.
no, he loves you. Don't worry about like
Yeah.
he loves you. It's fine because I was just thinking if I can make my family love Ted, then Ted won't hate my family and then
Mhm.
everybody will be happy.
Oh my gosh. This is, I mean, they're all the same, really. I mean, and it's so anxiety, driven because I can totally resonate with that. Like just trying to control every situation, making sure everybody's getting along and he's not saying something he's not supposed to. Everybody's talked about this on the show. I mean, we're so driven by the anxiety of it all.
Yes, and to feel like you get in this mindset of you're trying to control the situation, you're trying to put out fires, make sure everything is okay. And what's so funny is when I did end up getting divorced, I mean, my family was shocked because they loved him because I hyped this man up so much because I was trying to do that. So we end up going out to eat at the Yak and Yeti restaurant, and I was so excited to get this burger. I'd heard that it was delicious, and I ordered this Kobe beef burger. And everything was good up until when I got my food. And my cousin, he ended up ordering the tikka masala. And he was like, he's very funny. Originally, I think he had wanted to split with me. He said, how about I get this and you get that and we'll split? And I said, no, I don't want that. I want this, right?
Right.
My food comes and his food looks terrible. And, he kept saying, oh, Juby, your burger looks so good. It looks so delicious. I really wish I'd gotten that. And I can take a hint. So I was like, would you like a bite of my burger? And he said yes. So I took my fork. I did not hand him the burger. I took my fork and I gave him a bite of my burger. And immediately Ted just like crossed his arms, was so huffy and puffy, upset. And he didn't talk for literally the rest of the dinner. Like we would try, I remember asking him, like, what was your favorite ride? Trying to get him back because it's like he had gone into himself with fury and I didn't understand what he was mad about.
Right.
Like
No,
genuine.
because you have to figure it out. It's your job to figure it out.
So I became an investigator. I thought maybe he was mad about what my cousin and I were talking about. Maybe he thought it was gossiping. I don't know, because he
Mhm.
kind of self-righteous. So because we had some family situations going on. But anyway, my cousin ended up leaving. Or wait, no, before that, the waiter came and dropped off the check. And all of a sudden, Ted was just so perky to this
Oh,
waiter. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. The food was amazing. I love this place. Amazing job. And I about lost it because I was like, this is ridiculous. You're being so rude and so awful to us. And then you're so flowery to this waitress. So my cousin went to the bathroom and I ended up turning to him and I was a little sassy. I said, so you can be nice to the waitress, but you can't be nice to your wife. And it did not go over well. So he ended up just exploding on me and telling me that the reason he was mad was that I gave a bite of my burger to my cousin and that was disrespectful to him as the man at the table.
oh my
Um,
gosh.
oh my gosh, like what even is that? So I was just taken aback and he wanted me to apologize for being so disrespectful. And he was saying, you're so disrespectful, you don't even see it anymore. Like the fact that you can't see this, it just like proves that you're so disrespectful. And
I'm laughing because I heard the same thing. Like he would get mad at me and I'd be like, what's going on? What are you mad at? And he'd be like, if you don't know, you really need to stop and really think about the way you behave in public so that you can figure out why I would be mad at you. And I'm like, I don't understand. What are you? And really, there's nothing to fix. It's their own issue.
no, definitely. So it's funny because I think so often in this marriage, I had apologized. Like I had gotten so used to,
Yeah.
I know how to fix this. I know how to make it go
Yeah.
away. And the way to make it go away is to say that everything was my fault. and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was about the circumstance, the absurdity of it, the like, what are you even talking about? I refused. I was like, I'm not gonna apologize. This is
Mhm.
crazy. I don't understand what's going on. So we ended up leaving the restaurant and he started screaming at me in public. I was like, this is going to end up on the internet, because it was
Right.
just so trashy. He was screaming and saying that he was going to strand me in Florida, that he was going to take my credit cards and my ID and throw them in the parking lot. And I mean, you're going to have no way to get home. And
Was this in the restaurant or were you guys outside?
he ended up going outside. So we were outside the restaurant, and my cousin, during the middle of this, ended up coming up to me. And yeah, he was like, what's going on? And I kind of told him, and he said, okay, well, I'm going to go with my son and like take a walk. We'll meet up with you guys later. So I don't know. But I was left there with Ted just screaming at me. And I ended up saying, you're acting like trash. Or maybe I said, we're acting like trash. I actually don't remember, but I
Uh-huh.
had to apologize for that later because that was so mean to say.
I can't believe you said that. Oh my God.
Like, how dare I, right? Because I was like
He's screaming at you, but you can't comment on it.
cussing at me in front of children. There's children everywhere,
Right.
like it's Disney. So we ended up separating. We came back together and he was just huffy and puffy the rest of the day. And I was like, we just need to get through today because we were actually going to go to the airport right after that. It was our last day. So we went to the airport and I just kept telling him, we'll talk about this when we get home in Atlanta. So the next morning, we're in Atlanta. We wake up and he wants me to apologize for the burger. And I just refused. I was like, that's not a normal thing to be mad about. I
Mhm.
don't think I did anything wrong, but I'm sorry I said you were acting like trash, right? Okay.
Right.
But I was starting to feel really concerned because my nephew was there and he was only 2. He was a
Mm.
baby. And what's so horrible is we had cats at the time. And I remembered when we got these cats, I told him, I'm scared to have kids with you. Show me that you won't yell at me in front of cats. Like
Right.
test run, because I
Yeah.
was terrified to have children with this man and he couldn't even do that. So he would still scream at me. So I told him, I really didn't like how you yelled at me in front of my nephew.
Hmm.
And would you yell at me in front of kids? And he said, if you deserved it. And I
Wow.
said, well, I will not be having kids with you. And, this conversation was so chill. Like the tone that I'm using right now, like it was probably even softer than that.
Yeah.
It was a calm environment when we're having this and conversation. And then he just ended up leaping at me and pinning me to the bed and strangling me. And yeah, I
Mhm.
didn't fight back or anything. He ended up stopping. And that was the second time that he had. And immediately he fell to the floor and he's crying. Oh my goodness, please forgive me. Please forgive me. I'm such a bad person. I'm such a bad person. And in the past, we had gotten in this loop where I felt this very Christian need to minister to him or show him God's love. So when he
Yeah.
would do this in the past, I would get on the floor too and I would rub his shoulders and say, you're not a bad person. Like that wasn't okay. You need to not do that, but it's okay. I love you. And I just didn't do that this time. And I didn't comfort him. I asked him to leave. He ended up leaving, although he was saying, I'm going to call the cops on myself and I'm going to have them come arrest me.
Oh my gosh.
He would always say stuff like that, like, woe is me, I'm so bad. And
Mhm.
I had him leave and I called the domestic violence hotline because I really didn't feel like I could talk to anybody in my life about it. Because once you tell somebody that your husband is abusive, you can't take it back.
Mhm.
Once the knowing is out there, it felt like it was something that I was just scared to tell my family.
Mhm.
And I called the domestic violence hotline and they were so wonderful. They took me through a list of, I think, maybe around 15 questions. And I ended up saying yes to about 13 of them. Like, has he ever done this? Has he ever done that? And what's so funny is when I called, I said, I don't even know if he's abusive. I said, I really don't know. I said, he's really great a lot of the time. He'll be great for 2 months and then something will happen. And he's not a bad person. And, I'm not perfect either. And this
Mm,
woman really helped me see, she said, if he was bad all the time, he knows that you would never stay. So it really made me realize, okay, maybe this isn't who he truly is, this wonderful, nice guy for 2 months. Maybe that's also a part of the manipulation as
yeah.
well, to
Mm,
get me to stay. So I ended up calling my mom
mm,
and I told her, which I was still using very delicate language. I called her and
of
said,
course.
put his hands on me, is what I said,
Yeah.
and then even when I did tell people, I said, oh, he choked me, but it's like,
Mm,
no, you choke on food. You know what I mean? Like I
mhm.
very much was still trying to say it in the nicest possible way, but my mom was amazing. And she knew what I needed to hear. She knew that I needed to hear that I didn't need to make any decisions right now. Cause I said, well,
Wow.
I don't know what to do. And she said, well, we're going to book you a flight and you're going to come home. Like she's telling me what I'm going to do. We're booking you a flight. You're going to come home
Mm,
and maybe you guys can go to counseling and maybe it's going to work out. But right now you need to be away from him and you need to get to safety. And I think that's exactly what I needed to hear. I think had somebody told me, you need to get divorced, like you have to do this, you have to leave him, I
yeah.
think it would have made me panic. I was not in a place to make like such a big life decision.
Yeah, you're right. That's a great way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's what I needed to hear that, okay, I'm just going to go home for a little bit. And that's how I phrased it to him. Although a part of me definitely knew that, okay, maybe I am getting divorced. Maybe I
Mhm.
won't see him again. And actually, I ended up giving him a goodbye kiss at the airport. It was 2 days later, I think I ended up leaving and gave him a kiss at the airport. And I remembered thinking to myself, I think this is the last time I'm ever seeing you. And it felt like a
Mhm.
kiss goodbye. Goodbye to this part of my life, goodbye to all of this. And he was very unaware. He thought that this was going to be a short thing. But I knew that if he really knew that I was considering leaving him for good, he would not let me leave. So I was
Right.
very much in survival mode of just
Yeah.
tell this man what he needs to hear
Yes.
to get to safety as fast as possible. So,
And that's really and that's a good point to make that we leave, even if we're not in physical danger, we leave quietly and strategically because you don't know what's going to happen. Because you guys were having a calm conversation and then he went at you. And so you don't know what's going to happen. And I want to ask you a question that is going to come out wrong, but I want to know, why do you feel like you didn't fight back? Where was your mental state there? And don't take offense. So you know what I mean by that.
not, I'm not. I think it was just shock. I also
Yeah.
think like I've done
Yeah.
it before and I didn't fight back before. So I really do just think it was shock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, no, and I just was curious because that makes a lot of sense. It just really make you go into such survival mode that it's almost like, well, this thing is happening. This is what's happening right now.
Yeah. I think maybe it was a bit of the freeze response mixed with like internally the fawn response, because I think I knew that if
Yeah.
I fought back, it would escalate it. Like
Yeah,
if
that
I
makes sense. Yeah.
fight back, then we're like brawling, or then like maybe
Mhm.
he'll take it even further. And actually, I feel like maybe that's what would have happened had I fought. Not to say people shouldn't fight back. I'm just saying me personally in that situation. I think in my mind, I was also doing that risk assessment of if I just lay here, will he stop? Will
Yeah.
he will he stop? And he did. So
Yeah, and that makes sense. Yeah, and I totally get that. The freeze and fawn. Oh, yes.
yes,
It's
definitely.
such part of the survival. So when you went home, did you never went back or did anything? Okay, what happened from there?
Well, actually, I did go back, but I never saw him. So I was
Oh,
very strategic. I went to a Christian counselor. My parents paid for me to go, and thankfully, she was great. She was actually a domestic violence survivor. And I don't think that they're supposed to tell you about their business, but she told me about hers. And she said, I believe that God says that you're allowed to get divorced. And that was exactly what I needed to hear, that there was
yeah.
this woman who is divorced and she's telling me that it's okay and that I can restart my life. So I ended up telling him over the phone. And it was so funny because he was sobbing on the phone, like, no, don't leave me, don't leave me. And I said, I'm not changing my mind. And he immediately stopped. And
Wow.
very stony after that, so I'm like, he was just crying to try to get me to not leave him. But I was strategic when I went back to Atlanta. I had to file for divorce in person. I had my friends like babysit him, our mutual friends. I said, take him to a movie and I'm going to go with my dad and we're going to go get my stuff. And I had about an hour and a half in the apartment, got my stuff, and they made sure that he wasn't there. So I never saw him again.
Oh, that's so good. And so then you were able to file, and then you just were able to go through the divorce process without having to see him?
Yes, it was so lucky because so that was in January 2020, and I filed for divorce, I believe, on May 8th or 9th of 2020, or sorry, March 8th or 9th.
Oh my gosh, you did get lucky. Wow.
It was right before the pandemic. And I remember, we were washing our hands on the flight because we knew that something was going on. And because of COVID, they were doing all divorces over Zoom.
Oh,
It was a dream scenario. And we were divorced by July, early July. It went through so quickly. And he got a lawyer, probably because he was afraid I was going to put him in prison. I did file a police report and file for a restraining order after I filed for divorce. But he got a lawyer because I think they were afraid I was going to press charges against him, which I didn't end up doing, which in hindsight, have mixed feelings about.
mhm.
But what's it called? Oh, his lawyer like gave me everything I wanted, which was for him to take on all our debt because he was like a big spender. We had a lot of credit card
Mhm.
debt and he just took all of it. And I let him have the car. I let him have everything in the house. And I just said, I just want to be out with
Mhm.
no money and no debt. Like just set me free is all I asked for in the divorce. And
Yeah.
he gave that to me. So I think he was afraid I was going to press charges, but his lawyer was very nice to me, actually. Like she was a woman and she understood her client was like not a great person, So she was kind to me interactions.
Oh my gosh. That's such an amazing story of like everything you've been through and such survival and everything. It's just, oh my gosh. And then now you're doing two different podcasts to really talk about this. Not only were you on social media, so now you're doing the podcast, which is such a natural way to go. I was like, I was doing social media. I'm like, you got to get on a podcast. We got to reach more people here. So tell me about the podcasts and what they're about.
Yeah. So the first one is Healedish, which I love Healedish. I didn't expect it to be what it is. Like I thought it was going to be just people's healing stories. And honestly, it's mostly turned into a deconstruction podcast. Like it's a lot of people talking about their experiences with IHOP or Bethel
Mhm.
and just other religious systems and cults. And yeah, there are some other non-religious healing stories in there, but it's mostly a religious
I know
trauma.
that's how my show is. It didn't start out as the nurse's show, but it is now.
I'm like, it's naturally just the way things went.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love Healedish. And then my other podcast is the Overshare Hour, which is so much fun. It's a Reddit stories podcast. So it's just funny, like we just
Yeah.
read funny, crazy stories and react to them. And I always try to throw in like religious purity culture stories in there as well that I can find on Reddit. But that
Mhm.
one's a little bit more lighthearted.
Yeah. It's both of them are great. I listened to both of them. So thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your stories. And guys, if you want to connect with Jubilee, we're going to put everything in the show notes. But tell us, I want to know what's next for you. Do you have any plans or are you just working on the podcast?
So, big plans are to write my memoir. So, I'm
Awesome.
actually in the middle of writing it right now. And as we speak, a book proposal is on the table and we're starting to submit that soon. So, I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to publish this book and it'll go into all of the stuff with Bethel and the Disney World Burger and just
Yeah.
healing from domestic violence and religious trauma.
That's amazing. That'd be great to read for sure. So, and you'll have to do an audiobook as well.
Oh, of course. I'm scared my voice will get tired, but I will do it
Oh,
for
you don't do it all in one day. You do it over days.
hopefully that will help. Yeah, for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah, for sure. Because you would get tired. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you start tripping over your words. I started to do mine, and it's like you start tripping over your words and you have to stop. And it's a little exhausting. So thank you so much for being here today and for sharing everything. I so appreciate you.
you. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
And guys, if anything resonated with you today, please go check out Jubilee. We're going to put everything in the show notes. So just scroll on down and check everything out. Click all the buttons. And of course, go check out her podcast as well. And anytime you like anything, always leave us a 5-star review because that lets podcast land know you love us. So Jubilee, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me today on the That's Where I'm At podcast. Did the story today resonate with you? Do you think others would benefit from hearing the stories we are telling? Please go to Apple or Spotify right now to leave a review so everyone in podcast land will know you love the show. We want to continue sharing stories of hope and healing. I'll be back next time. I'll talk to you then.